What is up, miners? Welcome to another Build a Mine Bitcoin episode. I'm here with Will. I'm here with Ross. We are excited about this episode. Every time that we get to talk with builders in the Bitcoin space, it's just a fun conversation. And today we have Ross with us. Ross is a Bitcoin Meetup organizer. He's a time chain chronicler and a Bitcoin builder. He's part of the team down at Miami BitDevs and Bitcoin Grove, which is a self-proclaimed Bitcoin hackerspace. So I'm really excited to talk about that. I want to get into it. I'm not sure what a time chain chronicler is, so I want to ask him about that. But Will, what's a time chain chronicler?
I don't know, but it sure sounds cool. I mean, I have a few guesses, but let's hear from the man himself.
All right. Well, before we do that, guys, I want to tell you about our mastermind club. So this rip is brought to you by the mastermind. This is the best way to master the ropes and get a foothold in the world of Bitcoin mining. You can join a supportive community of like-minded individuals like Will and myself. We meet weekly to share insights, exchange ideas, and provide mutual encouragement along the road to building a Bitcoin mining facility. So as a member of our mastermind club, you'll gain access to exclusively monthly deep dive sessions. We jump into technical topics such as site procurement, electrical infrastructure, contracts, hosting, all kinds of different things. It's a lot of fun. It's really exciting. And if you join, you'll be able to acquire the knowledge and skills needed to navigate the complexities of these mining operations. What sets us apart is, in addition to our value additive group dynamics, you can enjoy personalized one-on-one sessions with people like me, people like Will, and our other team members as well, as Scott offered, who has been in the industry for about 7+ years. He knows everyone, he knows everything. And if you join our club, you'll be able to get hourly sessions with the team. It's a lot of fun. So you'll gain access to privileged pre-sales, minimum order quantities, and secure your place in the ever-evolving world of cryptocurrency with inside opportunities reserved exclusively for our club members. So don't miss out. Join today. I'm going to put it on the screen. You can scan the QR code or go directly to bitcoinminingworld.com. Go down to the mastermind and you can join there. All right, guys, let's get into this rip. I'm going to bring up Ross to the stage. Ross, welcome to the Build a Mine podcast.
What's up, guys?
It's another day. It's a beautiful day here on the Oregon coast. Will, how's the weather looking over there?
Oh, it's great here in the Midwest, man. We got sun, we got warmth, we got greenery everywhere, we got water everywhere. It's great.
Yeah, well, Ross is in Miami. So how's the weather down there, man?
It's hot, man. Sticky. You know how it goes for the summer.
Yes, it is.
We're trapped for today's rip in the Bitcoin Grove, so it's nice and air conditioned in here. But we enjoy our 99% humidity.
Oh yeah, definitely. The one time I was in Miami was during the Bitcoin Energy Summit, and I had gone outside. It was nice and sunny out. There was a few clouds, and then we went into the event. We came out, and it was pouring rain. And my hotel was just across the block. So I was like, I'll just walk, and I ended up walking there and I got completely soaked. I mean, like I was drenched, but it was so hot that I was dry. Once the clouds moved away, I was dry again. I'm like, man, this is the craziest thing ever.
Yeah, some people pay money for that sauna treatment, we just get it out here in nature. So
just get it for free. Oh yeah. So you provided us with a question when you filled out our form, and I kind of wanted to start off with this question because I really thought it was a great question to ask. So what do you think is the biggest threat to Bitcoin success? As a Bitcoin meetup organizer, you get to talk to a lot of different people who are building. You run Bitcoin Grove, which is a self-proclaimed hacker space. So I'm sure that you guys have a lot of opinions and a lot of ideas floating around and going from place to place over there. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on this.
Right. From my observation, which is, in the circles are largely kind of the BitDevs or the Miami ecosystem. It's very biased from that perspective. But what I've seen is really Bitcoin is succeeding in a lot of fronts as an emergent money, but there is for sure social problems, and within development and kind of governing and upgrading or potentially changing Bitcoin. I think there's definitely some PTSD from early politics that inevitably come from humans kind of creating tribes and gatekeeping or power thing. I think that affects Bitcoin in a way. Ultimately, I think the design is really well insulated from some of the corruptible human situations where you get someone with power on a lever that is basically removes some of the principles that Bitcoin was created with, or like shifts it away from peer-to-peer electronic cash. I think the debates around how block space get used, and I think a lot of it's noise, but the problem for Bitcoin at the social layer, it comes down to relevance from my perspective. Is like, is Bitcoin going to remain the money of choice in a free competition? If we have these stable coin proliferation where all this information weapon being aligned to get people thinking dollars, and dollars is the demanded from a tax perspective from the West, and everybody in the US has that angle of like wanting to be able to have a stable dollar balance, where the volatility creates, I think, some of that. It's really down to Bitcoin remaining the emergent money as peer-to-peer electronic cash, and not having to change so much to accommodate DeFi or other hype waves to try to make it relevant to people. I think it's a fine balancing act, and I think it's a definite challenge. So a lot of the conversations from BitDevs, kind of people bring their proposal or the construction, and find kind of a very conservative wall when it comes to changing Bitcoin. So while it is a solution and a problem at the same time, like having that resistance to change is kind of by design, not a bug. But I think it does present like a reality if there's other things that are eating Bitcoin's lunch on with the money. If people aren't using it as money because of high fees or volatility, I think you need to respond to that. And if it's so hard to respond, we're in a tough spot as ushering in the Bitcoin standard if there's a real competition. So I do think Bitcoin is competing, right? I don't think it's a slam dunk that it's inevitable, but I think it takes conversations and organizing meetups and demonstration of how to use Bitcoin as money, and success long term. So people see the early adopters or the innovators for using Bitcoin as money succeeding at large, they tend to imitate. So I think we have to all be strong examples and exemplars of how Bitcoin can help us achieve our values and our vision.
Definitely, that's well said. So just a little background on myself. I'm not going to get too far into it because everybody's heard it before, but I'm a new Bitcoiner, so I'm a new coiner. I haven't even been in for a full cycle. So a lot of these problems, a lot of these things that are arising are very new to me. I know that Will's been in this space long enough to remember the block size war. He's been around to know like all the different arguments between some of the big, huge Bitcoiners. So my question is that, if we're going to change Bitcoin, how do we go about it in a way? Obviously, we don't want to change large things. Like we don't want to change the supply cap. We don't want to change maybe the block size, certain things like that. But how does one go about changing Bitcoin in a way that all Bitcoiners can agree? Because Bitcoiners don't agree on anything.
Right. I think it's a process that's been mapped out, and I've seen proposals for how to get around it. There is a formal BIP process, and recently we got new BIP editors, right? So BIP is of course a Bitcoin improvement proposal that you would submit, and that would be reviewed, and with enough consideration, eventually a BIP editor would give it like a number, and it would go into activation, and you would have, there's been different ways of going about that. So there really isn't like a blueprint when it comes to maybe like the consensus changes. For things that are more on the maintenance side of like, hey, we found a vulnerability, or this is, already achieved. And it's a hard kind of black box process when I say consensus of like, how do we know where we're at? Does that mean, the Bitcoin core consensus? Does that mean the larger social consensus across users, miners, developers? It's a, probably not an infinite number of people that had to kind of be in this consensus group. So it is a moving dynamic thing. But when, something like Taproot, it wasn't really contentious, prior upgrades were. So like something like the SegWit, I think had more opposition. And, the block size has caused a lot of debate, right? So these, depending on what it is that's changing, I think the process actually is different. I don't think there is like a blueprint on how to affect change for all potential courses. And there's some things that probably are never going to change, right? The supply around the 21 million asymptote, that's probably something that any proposal to change is just going to end up being something other than Bitcoin. It's a very strong social consensus. So yeah, it's a coalition building effort is really what it takes if you are proposing something that requires changing consensus dramatically.
Yeah, there's in my time, you know, I started out with Bitcoin meetups 10, 11 years ago or whatever. That's kind of how I kind of thrust myself into the space initially. And, you know, things were very different in those very early days, but some of it was relatively the same. I mean, there's different, kind of two different kinds of meetups. And so I just curious, Ross, what you think about this, but the two, I think, you know, there's the sort of Bitcoin social gathering kind of meetup. You know, it's kind of like an unconference on a regular basis, right? You just kind of show up. Maybe the organizer has an agenda or a program, but usually it's just, you know, a discussion and a happy hour social type of thing. And those are super important and super fun, and very educational for lots of new folks or just folks looking for community. They're super valuable for professional networking. And then there's BitDevs, and that's kind of like a bit more focused and serious, and there's a lot more there's very energetic debates that happen in both of these categories of meetups. But with BitDevs, I think, you know, better you than me perhaps to tell the audience what that kind of distinction is. I mean, I think I know, but and it is what it sounds like it is, but why don't you give the audience a bit of a explanation about the distinctions between these two categories of meetups, maybe focusing more on what a BitDevs meetup is and what it looks like and who should go?
Sure. So from my personal story, you know, I was living in the Bay Area, attended the San Francisco BitDevs meetup, probably 2017 was my first exposure to this format and idea, which was a fork of the, you know, original kind of chapter, if you will. Each city, I think, deserves to have these type of Socratic seminar discussions. So it's great to see like it's how it's proliferated. When I returned to South Florida, you know, I had grown up here. I saw there was a BitDev South Florida, which I was happy to attend. And some of that was just not as regular as what I had kind of been exposed to at the San Francisco BitDevs chapter, which was meeting pretty often. And I was learning so much more than attending kind of the more social side or agenda free, just shooting the shit, talking about, you know, Bitcoin or crypto at a large. You know, at this time, like I think ICOs hadn't burned out totally, and it was just a lot of noise where you would go to something that was a little bit more formalized in that there's a kind of a general rule on sticking to the format of, you know, most of the discussions are under, if not all, under Chatham House rule, meaning they're kind of subjected to permission for people like attributing anything. If anything's attributed, you kind of got to get asked, you know, people to encourage like free thought and discussion. We don't record anything, right? So it's a no photography event, and it kind of keeps people willing to, you know, just freely speak. And then from my end, it allows me to feel more comfortable asking all these stupid questions, which a lot of time you're not the only person with the stupid questions. So like, I think freeing up the discourse and like not having things live forever, it tends to elicit a different type of discussion, right? So, and they're Socratic method, all about learning through asking questions. So we post topics before a Socratic seminar where people can kind of tune in, prime themselves with a couple informed questions. And it really doesn't cover, you know, like basics. And I think this can be a little off-putting for, you know, newcomers to using Bitcoin as money, or just people that are not as familiar with fundamentals, because generally it tends to go deeper. And when I first started attending these, that was my experience was, oh my gosh, I don't understand what they're talking about at all. But studying Bitcoin more, actually using it and trying to adopt it as money, you would start to learn. I'm like, oh, that's why they were so, you know, cared more about these, you know, channel factory or whatever the topic of trying to bring a better, healthier discussion around some of the development conversations. I think it starts to click and you gain a larger, I think, more clear understanding of the technology and how to use it. And I think that's really important. It's one thing to get the economics, see the, you know, private central bank scheme and avoid inflation and kind of see all these ideas that are thing. But when it comes down to protecting your stack and really using it and running a node. And I think, it's been a long technical journey for anyone. There's only a few people who at Satoshi's level or early contributors really like see the big picture. So like nobody can cover everything. And I think bringing people together in the Socratic seminar type format allows people to kind of present their perspective and cover a lot of blind spots. And everybody kind of tends to specialize and know more about a certain direction of topics. So it's a, you kind of mind share and, build that mastermind type of setting with these Socratic seminars. And yeah, they don't necessarily have to only be, code heavy development topics. There's a lot of times where we talk more current events, and anybody recommends topics on either GitHub or we have like an open Telegram channel for Bitcoin Grove. And that's where the Miami BitDevs are hosted here at the Grove. So
Yeah, I definitely, I like what you said about like asking stupid questions, because I'm a new corner. So it seems like every question I ask is a stupid question. But my favorite thing about Bitcoiners in general is that there really are no stupid questions. And if you've got time to sit down and really listen to what someone has to say, then like if you're honest and you're open about what you don't know, there's people out there that are going to explain it to you. Like I don't know code. I don't understand computers very well. So like building a Bitcoin mining rig is like, I'm like, how do I do this? How does this plug in? And am I applying enough power to it? Like, did I do something wrong? Like, what is the firmware process? So all of these things, like, while it seems very simple to like somebody who's done it before, a lot of people get very like scared of the whole thing, because Bitcoin is not just oh, here's a Bitcoin and you hold it and you can have it now. And it's like, no, there's a bunch of stuff that goes into like actually building that security around holding and maintaining your keys and like all this other stuff. So what I like really appreciate what you said there was just that, anybody can come, anybody's welcome. It's not being recorded. So that means that there's like this idea that, hey, like, you can ask a stupid question and nobody's going to judge you for it, and you can come here to learn. So I really like that. And I think that what you guys are doing is beautiful. It's something that we really need. We need people building in Bitcoin, and we need Bitcoiners who have been in Bitcoin, like, yourself, like Will's been a very great steward for me learning things in Bitcoin, because when I have dumb questions, it's like, oh no, it's not dumb. This is how it works. So that's how we really get more people into Bitcoin. And that's really what we need, because there's so many people out there with ideas, with, minds that think different ways. You talked about perspectives, somebody could come at it from a different perspective altogether completely, and they might have that thing that just fits into the spot perfectly. And when it fits, everything lights up like a freaking firework in their mind. And they're like, we need to go do this. We need to go build it. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and it starts to accelerate that flywheel, bringing us toward a real option where Bitcoin, it can be the unit of account for an economy, parallel of the existing system. I think that takes these really long-term commitment and regular kind of patronage of the organizers and businesses who are coming early and willing to do it while it's still risky, either accept Bitcoin for goods or services, or to promote education and allow space be dedicated to that. I think it's a critical part of that path to where we're headed. So encourage anybody to start attending either format, but for BitDevs, yeah, definitely be ready to learn and accelerate your large big picture understanding of how Bitcoin fits into the larger just new money,
Yeah,
peer-to-peer
Ross,
electronic cash.
along those lines, I'm very familiar with how to grow one of these social meetups, right? A more typical social meetup. But it seems to me like once you have kind of an insular group of all maybe mostly introverted type of folks, who are developers, coders, and they're attending BitDevs, that it kind of becomes harder to grow the membership of a BitDevs meetup at a certain point. What do you guys do to overcome that? And are you still growing at Bitcoin Grove, in Miami? Like, how do you grow? What do you do to advertise and invite more people to come?
Sure. I think, we benefit being in Miami, having the annual conference, which of course this year they took off for Nashville, but the last few years we've had, a large BitDev Socratic, where I think you kind of get to a number where it's hard to keep it interactive and engaging and let everybody participate. So I think there is kind of a sweet spot for a format like that type of event for like really going a 2-hour Socratic seminar where everybody gets to engage and everybody walks away with something. I think you kind of cap that somewhere. Yeah, exactly what you said as far as it does kind of, there's a certain number of people that want to participate. And I think you bring more newcomers in. There's a program, Summer of Bitcoin, which I know is a really exciting way to connect kind of the undergrad, graduate level students with some of the open source projects advancing Bitcoin. Just kind of new blood in that sense of like people who are interested at the university level have an avenue through their program. So at Bitcoin Grove, we started doing just more events, with regulars who would attend BitDevs. They all have kind of a different talent or skill set. So I think demonstrating and putting on, different types of, outreach, for communities that do different things. So not always maybe programming, but like we had design meetups at the beginning of the year where there's the Bitcoin design Slack. So we were kind of engaging and having like a physical, space for the conversation around what they're doing on their Slack and the case studies and different design initiatives. So I think activating, I guess, different talents and skills that can apply to, where we're, onboarding new Bitcoin users, there's infinite potential. So even like the local, we're here in a co-work. So just talking to people who are outside, we have our, Bitcoin flag waving, and they tend to kind of say, hey, what's going on there? Oh, you guys have a free events. When can I come by? So maybe they don't jump right into BitDevs from the, newcomer perspective, but with just the no agenda socials and regular like casual meetups, I think it's almost like a feeder, if you will, for our peaceful revolution. I think there's a consistent like reality where Bitcoin's becoming more important to people.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
I earlier spoke to relevance, but I do think like you have a drip of like just, people waking up. So I think, some of the appeal and promotion on free events and come for a good time, but stay for some of the larger, more important conversations tends to catch some people.
Yeah, you have a huge advantage being in Miami, obviously, with so many folks who've migrated there in the last 3 or so years, who are, big into tech or big into this industry, Bitcoin or crypto at large or whatever. So that's a huge advantage. But I think another key thing, another huge advantage you guys have is the physical space. Like as soon as a meetup gets to the point, maybe it's, probably very common in larger cities, but even some mid-tier cities are starting to have folks or benefactors who set up a physical space, whether it's a co-working space or a multi-function type of, event space that doubles as a Bitcoin space or whatever. Those are huge advantages for meetups. But I think one key thing that you touched on, I hadn't really thought of, a great strategy to grow your developer focused Bitcoin meetup is to also have a social meetup and just use it as, like you said, as a funnel to get people who would come to the social meetup, because those are easy to kind of advertise and promote and welcome people on a very, low barrier of entry type of way. You find developers that way, and then they are curious to get into the weeds once they've kind of gotten their itch scratched a little bit with their curiosities around Bitcoin. So that is another great strategy. I'm just kind of laying this out there for any listeners who want to get these things going. I always like to encourage the audience to go and start these events and meetups and stuff like that. But I'm curious, what is maybe the most energetic discussion or debate going on at the BitDevs meetup in Miami right now? There's a lot of cool developments that have happened in Bitcoin recently. Certainly the halving or even the advent of runes on Bitcoin probably stimulates a ton of discussion. Or as you mentioned, some of the previous soft fork initiatives, whether it's Taproot or other things. I'm curious, what are the most intense discussions or debates that are currently happening at your events lately?
So recently, I think the topics without attribution that come up that get people fired up have been around some of the scaling solutions and L2s, like this definition of how do you get back to on-chain Bitcoin, and is it a multi-sig, a fancy multi-sig? Is it a meta protocol? Or is it, this layer 2 category, which has gotten a lot of like capital interest with people raising money to build the technology? And I think not as delivered as much of the scaling promises. But so, those discussions are typically, more passionate. The lightning conversation is ongoing. And I think one of the interesting directions or just topics that comes up, and people typically have their either horse or an opinion about like where, the path forward is. But the discussion at least gets the attention around improving lightning and covenants specifically. So like the context around vaults, and there's been proposals on different ways to do it. Some that have gotten a lot more made more waves, and some have kind of just added on to that long list of constructions to ultimately achieve a shared goal. But everybody kind of comes at it like we were talking about with their perspective and a different trade-off or interest. So I think it gets tiresome after a while of like, oh, a brand new construction to do this again. From my perspective, like I just try to chronicle and use these conversations to build up more informed and realistic, accurate view of kind of what's going on and what can I do with Bitcoin, what is possible, what isn't possible. And I think, covenants, I think the other one more recently, eCash as a scaling complement to Bitcoin. So the blinded signature, Chaumian eCash in a federated way. So I think the Fedimint project. And then a topic about, the communication technology, right? So like is some of the Nostr conversations we carry into like, these are outside of Bitcoin, but so people bring it up, and we're happy to talk about, other interesting freedom enhancing technology that helps us scale Bitcoin. And I think, organizing online is just as critical as, coordinating to organize in person and bring us forward. So I think it's interesting that people have so many strong opinions about, which tool you use for messaging and what is the right directive to go, and how we can further advance toward the cypherpunk goals of a private, free society based on the principle of privacy. So I think privacy is always going to be a critical topic as well.
You talk about strong opinions, and that's one thing about Bitcoiners, and I think maybe it's just the ethos of Bitcoin, but people with strong opinions and with their own ideas, their own thought processes are usually the ones that come into Bitcoin first. So, you have this big, huge group of people with just strong opinions and like ideas that are flowing. And so I'm sure that it probably gets a little heated. There's a little bit of debates, coming back and forth, but we generally, I've been to a few gatherings, not meetups technically, but getting to watch people like have arguments, but then also like understand like, oh, I'm coming from it from this side, you're coming from it from that side. Let's kind of like find a way to meet in the middle. I do think that that's very important for like these meetup events and stuff like that. That's where people can come together, because on Twitter and like Nostr and stuff, mostly Twitter, you just have people shouting at each other from across the room, and you don't really get to like meet in the middle and find that common ground. So it's awesome getting to hear what you guys are building over there. But you said something about chronicler, and it brought me back to this question that I have. What exactly is a time chain chronicler? I'm a new coiner, so I don't really know what that means.
Just bringing blocks, adding another block, chronicling all the transactions, keeping track of your UTXOs, and sometimes I think writing is a big part of it. I think one of my early, I guess, probably going back to 2017 when I started this CoinWord project, I started writing just about some of these topics, and continue to do that. And so I think it's a big part of observing how the time chain emerges as a critical part of the human story, and getting it down not only on chain, but in ways that will last longer than I will. That's the idea. So I think
Gotcha.
continuing to add just another voice into the talk about all the Bitcoin talk, I think has dating back. There's newsletters. There's all these different like the original writings of Satoshi. I think there's a large and growing just database out there of all these different things that have brought Bitcoin out there. And I think this podcast exists as another entry. So, it's part of the Chronicle.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I was a little confused. I was thinking maybe like you're doing something with the Bitcoin blocks themselves or something like that, but that makes sense. So
yeah, I think the Genesis block with Chancellor on the Brink. These are some of the entries. There's a long to try to tell like an alien species observing what humans have done with Bitcoin. Like you kind of need to bring it from one end to the other. Ultimately, the time chain is the truth, and then all the other stuff is the subjective explanations. So we each have our own voice to kind of capture it, and I think that's what a chronicler does is put their entry out there.
Yeah, we just had another message put into the Bitcoin blockchain once Germany finished selling all of their Bitcoins. They kind of trolled the German government with a message. I can't remember specifically what the message was, but I don't think it was, "Hey, Germany, have fun staying poor," but it was something along those lines. Something along those lines, or maybe it had something to do with the German bear whale or something. But there was another sort of, entry into the Chronicle, put into the Bitcoin blockchain, these messages that, people can put forever in there, just like a time capsule. And I love that kind of stuff. We've been talking about your events and your space, and I just want to take a moment to talk about our event, the Mining Conference. And we're going to have this conference in Brainerd, Minnesota. It's a beautiful vacation destination that's very family friendly in the upper Midwest. And we're going to talk about all things mining. The conference will feature industry leaders, and we already have a great slate of thought-provoking speakers and builders and entrepreneurs throughout the Bitcoin mining industry. So it's a great place to gain exclusive insights into the market, forge valuable network connections and professional connections, and just explore the potential of Bitcoin mining. It's a great event if you're considering becoming a Bitcoin miner, or you just want to learn more or participate or seek, some professional opportunities in the Bitcoin mining sector. And so participants at the conference can also attend our Build a Mine crash course. We usually do Build a Mine boot camps a few times a year here in Wisconsin, and they're 3 days long, and they're deep and expansive, and you can gain a lot of insights, getting hands-on knowledge, learning how to repair miners, learning how to set up a mining farm. And we're condensing that program into a single one-day crash course the day before the conference. So the conference is this fall, September 27th through the 29th in Brainerd, Minnesota. You can learn more about it at theminingconference.com or go to bitcoinminingworld.com and get more information there. Mark your calendars, go check out the websites and get your tickets. And we'd love to see you there. We've got a great group already planning to attend, and I'm sure once we get to Nashville and spread the word further about the conference there, we'll get a lot more really eye-catching, thought-provoking attendees to come join us there. So that's a great opportunity for us to get together and for us to promote more knowledge and spread awareness about Bitcoin mining. So we have a little message for you at the end of the podcast that we'd like to share regarding the conference. So make sure you stick around for that toward the end of the show. But yeah, I'm a big fan of meetups. I haven't been to one in a super long time, actually. I guess, having little children around will do that. My travel has gone down a lot since COVID, actually. Haven't traveled nearly as much, but do you have any cool programs lined up for upcoming events? Like, let's give you a chance to kind of share the opportunities that you guys are working on in Miami. You have your choice of who's who and well-known people with high profile in the Bitcoin space to attend your meetups and kind of share what they're working on. But what are you guys cooking? What's new and what's a big thing that people should put on their calendars to come and see you guys at one of your events?
Sure. So the regular cadence that we've been doing this year is every second Thursday, there's a Miami BitDevs. So if you are in South Florida, close enough, the middle of the month in Miami, come down, see us. And then every other Thursday, we've been having a stream. So this is a different kind of format where one of the Bitcoin Grove founding members, he's a core contributor to Bitcoin, has been just taking through kind of at a line by line explaining, breaking down how Satoshi got, the code base to where it is today, with all the different conversations that it's taken from there. So his own chronicle, but he's put together presentations. So that stream is every other Thursday. We have an in-person kind of Q&A and then live audience. So that's something recently started. If you can't get down here, you can still kind of participate in the conversation and hear, plug in. Moving forward, we're trying to do more kind of that introductory, bring more community, the new blood we were talking about. Premier Bitcoin, we have another Bitcoin Grove founding member who is really active with that. So we're hoping to do like in-person kind of more introductory. We have a classroom downstairs below our suite within the co-work at Bitcoin Grove. So we want to put that to use for the 101. So that's something that we're looking for instructors. If you know anybody who's around South Florida is very knowledgeable about Bitcoin and would volunteer, it's all a volunteer thing, but people go through the Me Premier Bitcoin diploma process. So really excited to introduce that probably late August. That's going to be a new Bitcoin Grove effort here in Miami. And then,
would you talk more about that? I'm sorry to interject. I'm just curious. I like I love thinking about these kinds of certification efforts, or kinds of professional education, continuing education types of things that are very much focused on our space. So is that something that doesn't exist yet and you guys are releasing it soon? Or just describe
that kind of like spun up with the effort in El Salvador and been very education focused. One of the guys who came together when we created Bitcoin Grove last year, right before Bitcoin 2023, was where we kind of got the physical location thing rolling. Me Premier, as far as I understand, there's the diploma. I've kind of looked at their curriculum and it looks awesome. So they go through the courseware, and there's different kind of sections, and it's an open sourceware. So like we tweak it and put it out and say, hey, this is like our perspective on this topic, XYZ. So it's very much a building on top of giants. It's not something that we came up with in-house. I think it's kind of been put to test, mostly the El Salvador Bitcoin Beach effort. So we're just excited to kind of leverage what they have been validating and testing out in the wild for people interested in kind of learning Bitcoin from the ground up. But yeah, we don't have it live yet, but we are a node. So I think anybody can get on the Me Premier Bitcoin network and create a node and offer, get certified to issue the diploma in the course. So it is, I think, original, like the El Salvador effort really drove a lot of it. But yeah, that's kind of as much as I know about it, and I'm excited to see what it can kind of activate within our Miami action here for advancing Bitcoin.
That's awesome. So I've seen a number of these efforts over the years, and most of them end up being pretty successful and become respected kind of credentializing efforts around the space. And so I always think, there's room for more. There's so many different domains within this industry that I think could benefit from some professionalization around the domains as they grow and mature. And I think these efforts are great. So I think meetups are super important, and what you're doing is great. Can you give us a little kind of history or origin story about maybe just the Miami meetups in general, depending on how far back you go, or at least Bitcoin Grove?
Sure.
Also, I'd like to ask you what your role is at Bitcoin Grove while we're on this topic.
Right. Okay. I'll start with the origin and then get to the Bitcoin Grove story. But the first interaction I had with like a Bitcoin meetup was at the lab in Wynwood, years in probably like 2012. So this was before a lot of the altcoin and like Ethereum or anything like that. And very interesting, like a heavy adoption and kind of like the transient people coming from Miami going back and kind of back and forth. Like, you've seen a lot of the early adoption there, and, meeting people using it as money like that early, quite a, and kind of following along their trajectory and story has been quite a trip. But Miami as a whole, I think, got a bit culturally off the rails. We had a mayor shilling Miami coin. We had the biggest spectacle with the clown show of a lot of conferences just coming to almost turn it into, political campaigns or something of that nature, rather than like having conversations about Bitcoin, but just trying to, get a lot of eyes for their thing, and associate the Bitcoin brand became like the common thing. So you would go to a Bitcoin meetup and it would be, a lot of I like Bitcoin, but buy my shitcoin type conversations. But I want to shout out like somebody who through this cultural kind of decay and then revitalized with now Bitcoin Grove being around in Miami and keeping a lot of regular Bitcoin focused things on track. I think the weekly Bitcoin brunch meetup had been a lot of influence. And I think that's like another, we were talking about the advantages of being in Miami and kind of having a lot of people coming and going, and kind of a tech leaning interest building a little bit, while it's not super established like New York or San Francisco, there is some semblance of kind of that gravity pulling a lot of the technologists, or if you could follow up on the remote, and a lot of engineers could work wherever they want. So I think Miami appeals and has that, but the weekly meetup Bitcoin brunch, I think, is a huge piece of it. So big shout out to the organizer who every week for over 100, I think he's up to like 150 weeks. He gets out there and hosts and put up with a lot of this, hey, I'm looking to talk about, why my blockchain is more interesting to Bitcoin type of conversation, until a lot, Miami Heat was playing in the FTX arena for, I don't know which years, but so that was a tough time, I think, while there's, for meetups. But of course, a lot of that has just shifted into new flavors or kind of gone elsewhere. And a good chunk of these people have either been rugged or humbled in some sense and experienced a path that has led them now to kind of adopting Bitcoin as money and speaking to some of the like unsavory parts of the casino crypto crap. Everybody tends to learn their own way. Some people have to walk the path themselves. Some people are smart enough to observe others doing it. But doing it out in the open and having a regular weekly meetup where these conversations about this type of stuff, I think is.
Are you able to shout out who that organizer is of the Bitcoin?
Yeah, the Bitcoin brunch organizer, Prem Barbosa.
You did say Prem. Yeah.
We have him scheduled for a podcast. He hasn't responded back to me yet, but we're supposed to have a podcast at some point.
If I see him at a brunch, I'll
goose him. Yeah, Ross, it's interesting. You mentioned that meetup happens weekly, and that's something we did in 2013, 14, and 15 with the Milwaukee meetup. We held it weekly at the same place at the same time, and we had, even back then, 35 to 45 people every single week coming. And it was a kind of, there's the 20 or so that always come, and then everybody else would be new and just kind of come through. And again, you're right. Having a weekly meetup definitely invites a lot of these kinds of off-topic discussions, if you will, or just out of band of Bitcoin purism, I suppose. And I think you have to welcome that. It's part of this whole process of like maturing this network and Bitcoin gaining mind share. You have to sift through that. You have to help people through that if they want the help. You have to just be open to like doing that dirty work. And there's friendly ways to kind of help people through those things. It doesn't have to be all toxic maximalism or whatever. You can entertain it, talk about it, debate it in a friendly way, and then dismiss it. And
questions, I'd say the Socratic method, right? Like asking the right questions tends to unveil and reveal, bring people closer to some semblance of truth. I think that's, from a process standpoint, really.
So from that, how did Bitcoin Grove emerge? And you're the founder, but tell us, give us the origin there.
Right. So my effort with the Miami BitDevs, Prem's effort with the weekly brunch, Broward organizers, other education focused in like downtown Miami focus, all these different things kind of coordinated originally for what we called the Bitcoin vortex. So like we get hit by tropical storms all the time, so we're constantly dealing with get ready. So we kind of use that theme of South Florida hurricane preparedness, or just the coming of a week of Bitcoin events to build an excitement and bring people in from out of town and people who are kind of on the fringe of like, oh, it's a little far for me to attend that type of thing. But we would have BitDevs, brunch, barbecue, different type of series of unconference, if you will, just not really the events themselves, were the organizers' interests and tastes, but there wasn't any unified programming. I was just kind of like, if you all pick a day where it's back to back to back, we can coordinate and get the most, for the effort as far as like, more people would come, and that really worked. And by doing that, we kind of brought enough of a core together to lock up, an interest in a co-work, which is where we're at. Our suite, the Bitcoin Grove, is a 24/7 access for members, hackerspace within a larger co-work. So there's like shared resources across the co-work of conference rooms, studios, like different things that you can use. And then within our suite, we have desks, dedicated desk space for members. And we recently opened to flex space, kind of like a shared desk for we call it the flex members, just a typical co-work type setup. But within our suite, it's all Bitcoin contributors. So OpenSats grantee, Blockstream engineers, the block engineers. Our membership is a lot of like open source focused interest. But that's the type of people who kind of work out of Bitcoin Grove now. And I'm trying to continue to maintain like a high signal, like really focused membership core, and then invite other people to kind of benefit from having that within their city. And these conversations that occur at BitDevs and the meetups as a whole, when you have like a higher concentration of people who are day in and day out focused on advancing these things from a technical standpoint, I think it really helps you accelerate that, proximity toward truth, and avoid some of the dark pattern crypto casino rackets that tend to, come into the Bitcoin and space as far as like associating with the Bitcoin brand. So it's really, I think, important from, our community standpoint of having that. And so we continue to, make Bitcoin
I have
grow.
one more quick question before Trevor has a few questions, but you brought up the casino talk. There's some of these innovations that have been happening. I call them innovations. I mean, they could be just games or scams even, but some of these things are finding their way to the Bitcoin network. You could say runes, ordinals, inscriptions, these kinds of things that I think are interesting. I think some of them are interesting. I think these things migrating onto Bitcoin away from some of these other less secure and more experimental or more centralized, for sure, types of platforms and networks I think it's a net good eventually. But how do you guys handle those discussions? Those are tough discussions because we spent a lot of time as Bitcoiners trying to steer people away from a lot of these other networks that are centralized, that are vulnerable in many ways, and that are breeding grounds for lots of scams. And now some of there's kind of conflict amongst the steadfast Bitcoiner community around these. So how do you handle those types of discussions around what's useful, what's not useful, what's scammy, what's not? How do you police those discussions at your group?
From like just personal conversations, if I engage with somebody about, hey, I think this is cool, what do you think about buying token XYZ or whatever it is, I think my typical response is just my instinct, right? Which is what type of questions can we ask to get them closer to understanding that they're making a speculative, they're basically gambling. A lot of people engage in these things and don't really know that they're making the bet, or like aren't sure what they're even betting on. So I think the line of questioning that gets to that heart and finds the root of like, okay, do you really think that that's likely that this can't happen, right? So if we evaluate risk on any number of constructions that have a like rug pull, have some sort of custodial like incentive for somebody to, as soon as the value of just like taking money out, somebody that can is higher than like the potential or the risk associated with the future fees or whatever, racket that they have engineered. I just try to get people to see that, they're making a bet, and just know that the bet has a lot of risk factors. And like through the good line of questioning typically gets you closer. But people that are really shut off to conversation and open and just want to like kind of shill or sell, I think it's a high energy, maybe not the most efficient use of time to do. So like, you know, you pick your battles. But from a policing or like how do we regulate? I think you can't, right? I think ultimately you can accommodate the types of conversations, but like, you know, you can't really stomp out people from like you know, bringing their bags, so to speak, and wanting to talk about the thing that they are betting on. But when you expose it as a gamble and nothing less than a speculative bet, and on what, and if you can kind of characterize what they're betting on as foolish or just like asinine type of interest without a really good you know, potential outcome, I think typically they'll either try to get out of whatever position, or at least be quieter in those type of settings about, you know, confidently shilling their bags. But I don't think you can ever stomp it out. I think you can only respond to the bad information or the salesman with better kind of information. And I think you get to that by asking the right questions.
That's definitely something I need to learn how to do. Obviously, I'm not a good commentator on a lot of these different topics and stuff like that. But as somebody who, you know, talks about Bitcoin in my small town and in my community and around other people, I often get people, well, what about Ethereum? What about Solana? And I immediately just like start shooting them down with all of this stuff. And I've learned that that's not the best method to, you know, getting people over to the Bitcoin side of things. And so I'm going to take one out of your book and, you know, try to ask better questions instead of just immediately shooting them down for, oh, well, that's a shit token. Like they're corrupt, like they're scamming you, all this other stuff. So I think I learned something in that aspect of just trying to use the Socratic method of asking better questions and, you know, really trying to see it from what side they're coming at. You know, are they bought into Ethereum? Are they bought into Solana? Like, have they put money down on it? So are they kind of invested in it? And how can I, you know, ask questions to get them to understand that Bitcoin is a better like thing to put time and energy and effort into.
Right.
So, you know,
it exposes trade-offs too. Like a lot of people don't know the trade-offs that they're making when they're holding a bag of XYZ, right? So,
yeah,
you know, they don't understand how pre-mines, and they don't understand. They just think, oh, well, so and so made a video about it, and he's got a lot of followers, or, you know, they just don't get what they're even wagering on. So I think it's critical, but yeah, it's something that with more exposure, more conversations, and attending more BitDevs and hearing which questions and which line of questions kind of get you there quicker, I think you do just naturally pick it up. So engaging in that type of setting, I think it's the best way forward for gearing up that part of our brain. We all have that, you know, human capacity of curiosity and investigating. So
yeah, and just keeping
it.
people from being defensive, because, you know, as soon
Right.
as you get defensive about something, you're completely shut off and you're not willing to listen and hear the other person out.
Right.
So
No one wants to be lectured to.
exactly.
Reality.
So, well, I have a couple of questions for you real quick before we end this. But before I get into my questions, you know, Will had mentioned something about our Bitcoin or our event in Minnesota. We're going to be giving you 2 free tickets to our event. We'd love for you to come yourself. We'd love for you to join us in Minnesota and come and see what the event can do for you and for, you know, your people. But with the other ticket, because you are a Bitcoin meetup organizer, we'd love it if you would give away one of these tickets at your event, you know, as a door prize, or, you know, in whatever way you see fit. Just give it away to somebody who would be willing or would be extremely excited about this event, because we really want to build up that that social social status around the Bitcoin meetups and the devs community, all that good stuff. So we're going to give you a free ticket, and we hope that you can give one away as well.
Great. I'm going to try to make it, and I could definitely make it interesting. Maybe some sort of trivia or raffle type activity for that.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know?
And just, you know, we want the person who's going to go to just be really excited, because this is an event where you go to, you know, meet other Bitcoin miners, meet people in the space, and learn how to build and all this good stuff. So like, those are the specific people we're looking for. So make sure that it's geared towards that.
Yeah.
Okay, dope. Well, thank you guys.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, my favorite question to ask everybody who comes on the show, because you get a wide range of answers, because everybody, again, like we talked about earlier, perspectives matter, and, you know, people's lives, people's perspective really kind of like focuses in where they're coming from. So I'd like to ask you, Ross, what does Bitcoin mean to you?
Bitcoin peer-to-peer electronic cash. I think it means our best chance forward from escaping the grips of the monetary enslavement we're all born into. I think this idea that money comes from top down enforcement and entrapment, I don't think it really gives us the best human prosperity or freedom that we could achieve. The liberties that could be unlocked by a Bitcoin standard or a peer-to-peer electronic cash that Satoshi set out to accomplish is inspiring and like worthy of all the effort that we can come up with, I think. So that's what
Ross, real
I've
quick,
found in my own assessment.
how do you respond to people who say that Bitcoin failed in that effort to become peer-to-peer electronic cash, that it's no longer usable
Not
as
over.
cash and so on?
Yeah, I don't think it's over. I think in certain use cases, it's emerged as the answer. I definitely see the competition and acknowledge that in other places it has, not quite overtaken and merged. But I don't think we have seen the end-to-end story. The chronicle continues to go TikTok next block.
I
So,
love that.
I think for maybe an individual with a lot to lose, potentially an incumbent status or, benefiting from their proximity to the benefits of, private central banking. I think they may be the laggards or the latest to adopt, and they, may be waiting for it to be super obvious, where there's other people who have adopted Bitcoin as money and it has succeeded for them, right? So like my own personal story, I think, like I was referring to, I think we all have to kind of communicate and not necessarily go hide, but commit to revealing information at your discretion and practicing good privacy, but be an example for other people to see that Bitcoin can be money. You can build a life and use Bitcoin as money. I think you need to show it, and we're not in a global adoption consensus. So I think the story continues to get us toward that. I don't think the battle, each battle,
It's
I think
still early.
have,
It's
but the
still
war,
early.
ultimately the war, continues.
Yeah.
And it is a revolution, I think. I think Bitcoin is the monetary revolution. So for those that haven't clicked with that or think that's like cringe or weird or okay, that's fine. But I
Or the
think
revolution failed already.
yeah, I think there's always going to be detractors and haters, and I don't think Bitcoin needs to get every single person on board to emerge. It just needs really strong success stories, and then people will see what those early adopters, pioneers in Bitcoin have done, and they will imitate them. And I think that's the inevitable course. It's just not a straight line.
Yeah,
And we continue to walk it.
while Bitcoiners stack sats, Bitcoin stacks success stories. I like that.
Right.
I like
Right.
that.
And we should prop those up, tell them, and like, and have an honest expectation when people are coming to consider Bitcoin as money, because, more and more you look at the chart, dollars are decaying. So if we're looking at a Bitcoin price chart, we're really looking at no new supply information, right? We have zero unexpected inflation to be in here. It's only the decay of the other side of the unit, the dollar, that we can't really graph out accurately. But the demand on the, you're looking at how many people are waking up thinking, I want to buy Bitcoin today, right? And if you get more and more people waking up like that, then we have a lot of I think room to run in Bitcoin's dollar price. I think the idea that it can't go up astronomical with a greater level of Bitcoin adoption, I think it's so light right now. I think there are emergent kind of circular economies, Bitcoin beach type projects all over the world. But I think you put a couple more decades of effort and coordinating organization, you're going to have real economic activity that's taking up Bitcoin. But I don't think the exact tech stack is ready today, which is why I think having these conversations and bringing more experiments and just different people together to try approaches that haven't been done yet to reach more people is so critical. So it's part of the ongoing battles that we're talking about, the long war. But I think activating certain things that bring better vaults or security to self-custody, I think would be a huge win, and I'd love to see it. So I'm personally like having those conversations a lot with my circles, and I think that's what we got to do to build that coalition and social consensus toward a more practical adoption of Bitcoin as money.
The hard conversations must continue, and that's what they're doing at BitDevs. So,
trying to keep good ones at least. Yeah. Hopefully,
you can't keep them all out.
Yeah.
So
nor do you want to.
Yeah.
We
so
need for having me on to talk about it. I do have one more thing to shill as far as
shill everything, shill all of it.
There's been an initiative at Bitcoin Grove, which I've been a part of with some other founding members, where we kind of formed a hackathon team during Legends of Lightning and spun out. Right now we have a nonprofit which we're inviting freedom tech builders and Bitcoin developers to submit. There's a manifesto up. It's called Open Source Justice, and it's just about bringing a more fair dispute resolution and just overall not having state courts be the only option to get fair outcomes across the world. So opensourcejustice.org was a direct result of a Bitcoin hackathon team coming together. So I'm one of the directors working with other Bitcoin Grove members on trying to attract donations that we can put in the hands of freedom tech and Bitcoin builders through grants. So you've seen the work of OpenSats, you've seen the work of the HRF has a Bitcoin development track, Brink. There's just a growing number of efforts to make it a real option for people to contribute and work on this and earn enough money to support themselves. So with the, I think, ongoing kind of chilling effect from threats of tax liability to money transmitter charges to not, using self-custody in the US, a lot of people have pulled out or been a little bit more worried. And you'll see like really promising open source software or just things that are doing privacy tools that will be available everywhere but China, North Korea, US. Right? Like, why are we in that group? So in order to kind of combat some of the chilling effect on contributing to this open source space, the Open Source Justice Foundation was created to create, incentives basically to, hey, work on this. There's grant money out there for you. So opensourcejustice.org, drop an application if you're a builder with an idea or working on something that fits with the manifesto listed up on that site. I just wanted to get that one on record too.
I'll make sure that gets in the show notes. Is there any place you'd like people to, if they want to reach out to you directly, where can they find you?
Sure. For Bitcoin Grove, we have the website, btcgrove.com, and then email at Bitcoin Grove or email btcgrove.com is, you can drop a line in there. I'm on Twitter at Coinword, where I write silly things. And I think there's, I guess, X now. We stopped saying Twitter yet?
I don't know.
I say Twitter all the time.
Yeah.
I try to be formal and say X, but it just doesn't feel right.
We'll get used to it eventually.
Yeah. So Coinword, that's my handle on most of the socials. It's Coin WARD. Like,
are you on Nostr as well?
I do have a Nostr handle, mostly the Bitcoin Grove. I post on there from the Bitcoin Grove handle.
Okay, cool.
There's an MPub, I think, on our Bitcoin Grove Twitter.
Okay, I'll do some research. I'll find it. I'll put it in the description.
For sure. And then, that's I think I got them all out. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Well, guys, this has been a Build a Mind podcast. I think we're on episode 24 now, which is pretty cool. So we're excited about that. It just keeps chugging along. We just keep consistently putting out episodes. Will and I show up every single week to do this. And we appreciate you guys, coming and watching us and, coming with us on this journey of growth and knowledge sharing and learning. So if you guys like this podcast, please like, comment, share out on your socials. Let us know how you guys like it. Please email us or send us a direct message on X because we want your feedback. And lastly, watch it on Fountain, the value for value sharing platform. If you boost us out, I'll make sure that on the next episode that we record, we will give you a shout out and all that good stuff. So again, we appreciate you guys for watching the Build a Mind podcast, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you. Looking forward to the conference.
Please note, the Build a Mind podcast provides information for general educational purposes only. This information should not be construed as legal, financial, or investment advice. We do not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information presented, and we encourage you to consult with a professional advisor, legal advisor, and/or financial advisor before making any financial decisions. The Build a Mind podcast and its affiliates are not responsible for any losses incurred as a result of using the information provided.